Life has a funny way of mixing the sweet with the bitter. That's how I describe my current situation. I'm Hannah, 27 years old, and newly married to Ethan, the kind of man who makes every day brighter. We live in a small, charming house left to me by my grandfather. It's our little haven, filled with love and dreams of a future family. Ethan and I are saving up, hoping to buy a bigger house someday. But for now, this place is our world. It's quaint, filled with memories of my childhood and our life together. Then, there's Ethan's family. His parents, Robert and Linda, are decent folks. Robert's a bit stern, always emphasizing hard work and responsibility. Linda, on the other hand, is a sweetheart, always trying to smooth things over whenever there's a disagreement. But the real challenge in the family dynamic is Chloe, Ethan's younger sister. She's 24 and living a life completely different from ours. She doesn't work, spending her days hanging out with friends and living at her own pace. Family dinners are often interesting, like this one Sunday when we were all gathered around the table at our house. Robert was in his usual form, lecturing Chloe about getting a job. "Chloe, you're 24. It's high time you started thinking about your future," Robert said sternly, barely looking up from his plate. Chloe just scoffed. "Oh, come on, Dad. I'm doing just fine. Why rush life?" It was the usual script. Linda, ever the mediator, jumped in to defend her. "Robert, leave her be. She's still figuring things out." Robert's disapproval was palpable, but he let the topic drop. This was a recurring theme, Robert trying to push Chloe towards independence and Linda cushioning her fall every time. It's a tightrope walk in their household. Chloe's relationship with work, or the lack thereof, wasn't just a dinner table topic. It was a family concern. And yet, there was this unspoken rule not to push too hard and not to upset the delicate balance. Ethan and I try to stay out of it. We've got our own plans, our own future to build. But sometimes, family issues have a way of spilling over, don't they? After that Sunday dinner, things started to change, slowly at first, then all at once. Chloe began dropping by our house more often. Initially, it was just an odd visit here and there, but soon it became a regular thing. Almost every other day, she'd show up, sometimes even when Ethan and I weren't home. I remember one afternoon, I was in the middle of baking when I heard the front door open. In walked Chloe, as if she owned the place. "Hey, Hannah," she greeted cheerfully, sauntering into the kitchen. "Smells good in here. What are you making?" I forced a smile. "Just some banana bread, for dessert tonight." Chloe didn't seem to get the hint. She plopped down at the kitchen table, watching me. "Cool, I'll stick around for a bit if that's okay." It wasn't, not really, but what was I supposed to say? "Sure, Chloe, make yourself at home." The visits became more intrusive. Chloe would help herself to food in the fridge, lounge on the sofa for hours, and sometimes even borrow my clothes without asking. I tried to brush it off, telling myself she was just being friendly in her own way. But one day, I reached my limit. I walked into the living room to find Chloe sprawled on the couch, flipping through one of our wedding albums. "Chloe, I couldn't hide my irritation. That's private. Can't you ask before going through our things?" She looked up, seemingly unfazed. "Oh, relax, Hannah. We're practically sisters. What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine, right?" I sighed, trying to keep my composure. "That's not really how it works, Chloe. There should be some boundaries, She just shrugged and went back to the album. I felt this wave of frustration, but I swallowed it down. No use arguing. Ethan noticed the tension too. One evening after Chloe had left, he found me sitting on the couch, lost in thought. "What's up, Em?" he asked, sitting down beside me. I looked at him, the words spitting out. "It's Chloe." She's here all the time going through our stuff. It's like we don't have any privacy anymore. Ethan frowned. I know, I've noticed. Okay, I'll talk to her, Ethan promised. She probably doesn't realize she's overstepping. I nodded, but I wasn't sure if talking would help. Chloe had a way of brushing off any criticism, laughing it away like it was nothing. True to his word, Ethan spoke to her a few days later. I wasn't there for the conversation, but he told me about it afterward. He said he was gentle but firm, explaining that while she was always welcome, she needed to respect our space and privacy. Ethan assured me she took it well, said she didn't realize she was being a bother, and promised to back off. I wanted to believe him, but a part of me doubted things would change. As it turned out, I was right. The visits continued, and with them, the tension grew. It felt like walking on eggshells in my own home, never knowing when Chloe would pop up next. The situation escalated quicker than I expected. One Tuesday afternoon, I had the house to myself, so I thought. I was upstairs tidying up the guest room when I heard a noise from our bedroom. At first, I thought Ethan had come home early, but a peek down the hall confirmed my worst fear. It was Chloe. There she was, rummaging through my dresser. My heart pounded with a mix of anger and disbelief as I watched her casually pull out my clothes, examining them as if she were shopping. Chloe, what the heck are you doing? My voice echoed off the walls, louder than I intended. She jumped, clearly not expecting to get caught. Oh, Hannah, it's just you. I was looking for something to wear tonight. You won't mind, right? Of course, I mind it. Chloe, this is not okay. You can't just go through my things like this. It's invasive and disrespectful. She rolled her eyes, which infuriated me even more. Calm down, Hannah. It's not a big deal. I just wanted to borrow a dress. I felt my patience snap. It is a big deal, Chloe. This is my home, my privacy. You can't just barge in and take whatever you like. Her attitude was dismissive, almost mocking. Geez, Hannah, you're acting like I'm a thief or something. I'm just borrowing. I was about to respond when my phone rang. It was Ethan. Taking a deep breath to calm my nerves, I answered, trying to sound normal. Hey, Ethan, what's up? Hey, just checking in. How's your day going? I glanced at Chloe, who stood there with a defiant look. Not great, actually. We need to talk when you get home. After hanging up, I turned back to Chloe. You need to leave now and don't take anything with you. She huffed, dropping the dress back into the drawer. Fine, whatever. You're making a big deal out of nothing. As she stumped out of the room, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. This was more than just borrowing a dress. It was a total disregard for boundaries, and I knew it couldn't go on. That evening, when Ethan came home, we had a long talk. I told him everything, not just about today, but how Chloe's behavior had affected me for weeks. Ethan looked troubled. I'm sorry, I thought talking to her would help, but I didn't realize how bad it was. We need to do something, Ethan. It's not just about the clothes or the food. It's about respect and privacy. She's crossing the line, and it's not fair to us. Ethan nodded, his expression serious. I'll talk to her again. I'll make it clear that she can't do this. If she doesn't listen, we'll have to limit her visits. Despite Ethan's efforts to set things straight with Chloe, our problems were far from over. In fact, they got worse. It started with small things: a missing pair of earrings, a scarf I couldn't find anywhere. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful, but then the evidence became too obvious to ignore. One evening, I was scrolling through social media when I saw a new post from Chloe. There she was, grinning at the camera, wearing my missing scarf. My heart sank. It wasn't just forgetfulness. Chloe was taking my things. Ethan, come look at this, I called out, holding up my phone. When he walked into the room, he leaned over, looking at the screen. Isn't that your scarf? He asked. Yes, it is, I said, a bitter taste in my mouth. She took it, Ethan. She's been taking my things. Ethan's face hardened. I'll talk to her. This is crossing the line. The next day, Ethan confronted Chloe. I wasn't there, but he told me about it later. He said he was direct, showed her the photo, and asked about the scarf. Chloe's response was as infuriating as it was predictable. That scarf. Oh, I must have grabbed it by mistake. I have one just like it. Ethan didn't buy it. Chloe, it's not just the scarf. Hannah's noticed other things missing too. This needs to stop. Chloe shrugged. All innocence. I don't know what she's talking about. I haven't taken anything. It was a stalemate. Ethan believed me, but Chloe was in complete denial. What could we do? We had no proof, just a strong suspicion. The situation put a strain on our home life. I felt violated, unsafe. Even my own home didn't feel like a sanctuary anymore. Every time I left a room, I wondered if something else would be missing when I returned. It wasn't long before another incident occurred. This time, it was a pair of sunglasses. I knew I had left them on the kitchen counter, but they were gone the next morning. And as if on cue, Chloe showed up later that day wearing a pair identical to mine. Nice sunglasses, I commented, unable to keep the edge out of my voice. Chloe looked at me, a smirk playing on her lips. Thanks, got them a while back. Pretty cool, right? I didn't respond. What was the point? It was clear she wasn't going to admit to anything. Ethan was as frustrated as I was. I don't know what else we can do. If she won't admit it, how can we stop her? I didn't have an answer. We were stuck in this cycle of theft and denial, and it was wearing me down. I started hiding my valuables, locking doors I never used to lock. It felt ridiculous, but I didn't know what else to do. The thefts were bad enough, but what happened one Friday night took everything to a whole new level. Ethan and I were curled up on the couch, watching a movie, trying to forget our troubles for a while. It was late, maybe around 11:00 p.m., when we heard a commotion outside. Loud voices, laughter, the sound of a car door slamming. My heart sank as I peeked out the window. There in our driveway was Chloe, looking tipsy with a group of her friends. They stumbled toward the door, and before we could react, they barged in. Chloe was leading the pack, a drunken grin on her face. Surprise. She slurred as her friends filed in behind her, loud and unruly. Ethan stood up, his expression a mix of anger and disbelief. Chloe, what the hell? It's almost midnight. Chloe just giggled, swaying slightly. Chill, bro. We just wanted to hang out, have some fun. Her friends were already making themselves at home. One headed to the fridge, another cranked up the music on their phone. I felt a surge of frustration. This is not okay, Chloe. You can't just show up like this, especially not this late. Chloe waved her hand dismissively. Oh, come on, Hannah, loosen up a bit. We're just having a little fun. Ethan's patience snapped. He marched over to the group at the fridge. No, Chloe, you need to leave now. This is our home, and you're disrespecting it. One of Chloe's friends, a tall guy with a loud laugh, piped up. Hey man, no need to be a buzzkill. We're just partying a bit. Ethan was seething. I don't care. Get out, or I'm calling the police. The atmosphere shifted from rowdy to tense. Chloe looked at Ethan, her expression sobering a bit. You wouldn't call the cops on your own sister, would you? Ethan didn't waver. Try me. This is the last straw, Chloe. There was a moment of standoff, then Chloe sighed dramatically. Fine, we're leaving. You're such a killjoy, Ethan. As they filed out, the relief was palpable. Ethan locked the door behind them and turned to me, his face a mixture of anger and worry. I'm sorry, I had no idea she would do something like this. I just nodded, feeling emotionally drained. It's not your fault, Ethan, but this can't go on. She's out of control. The incident was a wake-up call. We knew we couldn't let Chloe's behavior slide anymore. But before we could figure out what to do next, something unexpected happened. My dad, a police officer, decided to visit us for a few days. He had always been my rock, and I was grateful for his presence, especially now. He arrived on a Thursday, his old duffel bag in hand, and a reassuring smile on his face. "Hey, pumpkin," he greeted me, giving me a firm hug. "Thought I'd drop by and spend some time with my favorite daughter." I smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. "I'm your only daughter, Dad, but I'm glad you're here." The only unpleasant moment was when Chloe showed up, asking to use the toilet. After a moment's thought, I let her in, not wanting to make a scene in front of Dad. He was a man of few words, but his presence alone made me feel safer. That evening, we had a quiet dinner, and I could tell Ethan felt more at ease too. The next morning, things took a turn. Dad usually kept his wallet and a few personal items in a small pouch he carried, but when he went to grab his wallet, his brow furrowed in confusion. "That's odd," he muttered, searching through his pouch. "I could have sworn I had my card in here." Ethan and I exchanged a look. "What's wrong, Dad?" I asked, a sinking feeling in my stomach. "My bank card. It's missing." He sounded more puzzled than worried. We immediately called the bank and blocked the card. Just then, my phone rang. It was Chloe, her voice loud and slurred, with music and chatter in the background. "Hannah, why the hell did you block the card? I can't withdraw any money." My heart stopped. "What are you talking about, Chloe?" "The card, Hannah. The one I took from your room. I was using it to buy drinks, and now it's blocked." I felt a mix of anger and shock. "Chloe, that wasn't my card. It was my dad's. He's a police officer, for God's sake." There was a pause, then a nervous laugh from Chloe. "You're joking, right? That's not funny, Hannah." "Dad, she took your card," I said, turning to my father, who was now listening intently. He took the phone from me. "Chloe, this is Officer Williams. You need to return my card immediately, or there will be consequences." There was a moment of silence, then the line went dead. Dad looked at us, his expression grave. "I'll have to report this. It's a serious matter." Ethan put his hand on my shoulder. "I'm so sorry, Dad. We had no idea she would do something like this." Dad just nodded, his face stern. "I'll handle it from here. Don't worry." The reality of the situation hit me hard. Chloe had stolen a police officer's card. This was no longer just a family issue. It was a legal one. I felt a mix of emotions: anger, disbelief, and worry. What would happen to Chloe now? This was a mess she had created, and now we were all caught in it. The situation escalated quickly after Chloe hung up the phone. Dad immediately got in touch with his colleagues at the station to report the stolen card. He was calm and professional, but I could tell he was upset. "I never thought I'd be filing a report against my own daughter-in-law's sister," he said, shaking his head. "But we need to follow procedure." Ethan and I sat in the living room, feeling a mix of anxiety and disbelief. It wasn't long before we heard a knock on the door. It was two police officers, Dad's colleagues, who had come to take a statement. As they were wrapping up, another call came in. It was Linda, Ethan's mom, her voice frantic. "Hannah, what's this I hear about Chloe and a stolen card? Tell me it's not true." Ethan took the phone, his voice strained. "Mom, it's true. Chloe took Dad's bank card and used it. The police are involved now." Linda sounded on the verge of tears. "But she's family. Can't you just let it go?" "She made a mistake," Ethan replied firmly. "Mom, it's out of our hands. Dad's a police officer. This is serious." The situation reached its peak later that evening at the police station. Ethan, Linda, Robert, Dad, and I were all there. Chloe was in one of the interview rooms, looking small and scared. Robert was the first to break the silence. "I can't believe she would do something like this. We've tried to raise her right." Linda was defensive. "She's just a child. She didn't mean any harm." Dad spoke up, his tone even but firm. Stealing is serious, especially from a law enforcement officer. It's not just a family matter anymore. We were waiting when Chloe came out, accompanied by an officer. Her usual bravado was gone. She looked at us, her eyes welling up with tears. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't think it would be a big deal." Dad stepped forward. "Chloe, you need to understand the gravity of what you've done. This isn't just a simple mistake." Linda rushed to Chloe, hugging her. "It's okay, baby. We'll sort this out." But Robert had had enough. "No, Linda. This is where we draw the line. She needs to learn." The officer cleared his throat. "We can proceed with charges, or if the cardholder wishes, he can decide not to press charges this time." Dad looked at me and Ethan, then at Chloe. "I won't press charges, but this is your last chance, Chloe. Any more trouble, and it's out of my hands." Chloe nodded, sniffling. "I promise. No more trouble." The incident with the stolen card wasn't just a passing storm in our lives. It left lasting changes in its wake. After Dad discovered the amount Chloe had spent with his card, Robert, Ethan's father, had no choice but to cover the expenses. It was a hefty sum, and the tension it caused within the family was palpable. We gathered at Robert and Linda's house for what was supposed to be a regular family dinner, but the atmosphere was anything but normal. Robert sat at the head of the table, his expression stern and resolute. "Chloe, I've paid back the money you took from Hannah's father," Robert began, his voice heavy with disappointment. "But I want you to understand this doesn't end here. You need to find a job and pay me back every penny." Chloe, who had been quiet until then, suddenly erupted. "Pay you back? That's ridiculous. I can't believe you're doing this to me." Robert was unyielding. "It's time you learned to take responsibility for your actions. I'm not giving you any more money." The declaration seemed to push Chloe over the edge. She stood up, knocking her chair back. "Fine. If that's how you want it, I'm leaving. I don't need any of you." The room fell silent as Chloe stormed out. Linda, tears streaming down her face, stood up to follow her daughter. "How could you, Robert? She's our daughter." Robert's response was firm yet tinged with sadness. "She needs to learn, Linda. We can't keep shielding her from the consequences of her actions." With a final sob, Linda left the room, leaving a heavy silence behind. In the months that followed, the family dynamic shifted dramatically. Linda and Chloe moved out, renting a small apartment. Robert, though heartbroken, stood by his decision, believing it was for the best. Ethan and I watched from the sidelines, hoping that Chloe would come to her senses. However, occasional glances at her social media profiles told a different story. Pictures of nights out, new clothes, and the same carefree attitude. It seemed Chloe hadn't learned much from the ordeal. As for Ethan and me, the whole experience brought us closer. We learned the importance of setting boundaries and the value of standing up for what's right, even when it's tough. Our home became our sanctuary once again, a place of peace and respect. Looking back, I realized that every family faces its trials. Ours was a difficult one, filled with tough love and hard decisions. But through it all, we learned valuable lessons about responsibility, respect, and the sometimes painful process of growing up.